sometimes how do you feel the perception of Islam as a religion? Like how people perceive Islam. Like how do you approach it? Is there any sort of understanding why they have that perception, or it makes you angry? Like how do you feel? How do you feel about the perception of that Islam gets?
Okay. It's good to be on the show.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me. I take it very, very cool. And if there's an opportunity for a conversation, then we would have the conversation. And there's this book I read a long time ago, The Odessa Five by Frederick Fawcett, and then there's a citation there that has never left my memory. One of the protagonists of the novel, I'm not sure if protagonist is correct. If my anyway, he said something. He was quoting a French proverb. He said, when you know the reason, then when you know the reason for something, you are ready to forgive everything. And it sort of maps into an Arabic proverb that we have, either ulima sabab batal al ajab. When you know the reason why people are having this perception, this negative perception, then you would not be bothered and surprised, especially if you've looked at it, studied it, and then critically assess the reason why people have this perception. They are no longer concerned. The only thing is that you leave rooms for conversations for people that really want to have the conversation. Yeah.
Okay, today on the pod we have the honor of the presence of Imam Abdul Kabir to share. I mean, we are going to learn from you today, given all the controversy that has been generated in recent times about Islam and some of the misconceptions. We hope that today you can help address them, because I'm sure that our listeners and viewers have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Yeah. So we're getting right into it, which is the conversation about the musician in Kano who was sentenced to death, right, for blasphemy. That has sparked like public, like should I say outrage, over the decision on why religious law is, superseding a federal law, things like that, conversations like that. But the first question from me over that is, what is the real deal? What's the real issue over this particular case or cases like this in terms of blasphemy? Speaking ill of a religion, of the deity in the religion and things like that. What is the main deal? Because you are a respected figure in the religion, you are the best person to tell us the actual truths in how this case should be dealt with. So what is the real deal in this issue?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and it's an honor to be here once again. So we need to break it down and take it. I would handle an aspect of it and then wait for the questions and respond to them. So there's this musician in Kano, Yahya Sharif Aminu, if I got the name correctly, who circulated a song on social media. And then the content of this was deemed insulting to the personality of the Prophet ﷺ. And then he went through a judicial process in Kano and then was sentenced to death. And then, of course, this would, of course, generate the usual hula baloo and then the usual criticisms, pros, and then you sort of map out those who have an issue with this, or not people who have an issue with it. You map out the different positions of people on this. You have Muslims who feel that, of course, this is correct. There's nothing. I probably belong to that camp. And then there are people who are Muslims who believe that no, this shouldn't be. It's not the way to be. And I've seen, of course, but as people respected in our community also, community of Muslims who come out to say that no, this is not what it ought to be. And then of course you have non-Muslims who feel that no, this is wrong. And I've of course seen, and this is probably the beauty of social media. I've seen a non-Muslim, a lawyer, I think from the East, who give a very. He looked at it from the legal perspective and said, "Look, you have nothing to. You have no grounds to stand as in faulting this particular thing." And as I said, so so that's from the angle of those who are protagonists. Then you can look at the angle of where criticisms are coming from, and that's why I'm not usually surprised when you can look at the angles where criticisms are coming from. Then you categorize them, and then you fashion responses to them. So there are people who believe that it's barbaric. There are people who believe that it's illegal. There are people who believe that it's the Muslim problem. And you have this range of beliefs, and then so when you look at it, then you start giving answers. So the easiest one is probably the legal one. It's very legal, and not derogatorily. I think a lot of people need to be educated as to the way they use words. So you find people say that why should you have religious laws in a secular society, so to say? And then I give them a very back-breaking answer. I tell them, like, Israel is secular, but the laws in Israel reflect what it ought to be in a Muslim society, and there are historical reasons for this. So, and I give Israel because of when I give Israel as an example, Christians will want to hold their breath and say, what's this guy talking about? And of course, Jews will say, okay, what is this guy coming about? So Israel operates a law whereby it's secular, then you have religious communities operating their own law.
Yeah.
This is the era of social media, the era of Google. You can Google the Israeli judicial system. Yeah. So there's nothing contradictory in having different court systems for communities. So in the case of Nigeria, we operate two systems. There's the secular constitution. Then you have the criminal code. This operates in the southwest, in the southeast. And then you have the Shariah penal code, which operates in the north. And the Shariah penal code is actually based on the Islamic Sharia. The particular school of law, because conversations can actually even go to there. The particular school of law that is operating in the north is the Maliki school of law. I mean, you have Islam as an entity, then you have the legal interpretation of some of the Islamic ordinances. You have 4 major schools. Nigeria operates the Maliki school of law. So and then one of those is why I said the legal one is the most easiest. There is no inherent contradiction between the constitution and this criminal code or the penal code. Both the penal code and the criminal code actually deem blasphemy impermissible. So when you ask somebody, what is the problem you have, and says it's the legal one, then you have no grounds to stand on, because even in the criminal code, I'm going to give the citation here, I sort of penned down some things. So you have this section 204 of the criminal code that states that if you blaspheme, I don't want to cite out the entire, any person who does an act which any class of persons consider as a public insult, and so on and so on to the end, it criminalizes this, and there's a 2-year penalty for it if you are found guilty. However, in the north, it's also criminalized. However, the punishment is capital. So at the end of the day, when you ask somebody, what is the problem you have from the legal perspective, you realize that it's not legal. It's probably, why should it be capital? Then we'll be into the realms of a different realm of argumentation there. So from the legal aspect, there's nothing. This is Nigerian law. It's been in operation for a while. Though the penal code I cited was the one published by the Ahmadu Bello University ABU in March 2002, the Ammonite Sharia Panel Code 2002. So, but this is the way that's been for a long time, that we share, that we have different criminal laws operating in Nigeria. So there's no problem when it comes to the angle of the law. So we will now look at from the other angles, philosophical angles, religious angles, emotional angles, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so but there are people who wonder, I'm sure there are quite a lot of people who are wondering that why do you have to, fight for a God who can take care of himself? Because you don't see that, for instance, in Christianity or some other religion. Why do Muslims get all uptight when you insult the Prophet? I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, why does this happen all the time?
Okay, so this is the way I'm going to take it. So when I said, first thing I do when issues like this happen is to break down the reactions into groups that I can easily deal with. So the argument that why should Muslims fight for a God that's omniscient, omnipotent? Why? You see, it's when you break it down, it's actually an emotional appeal, and of course you cannot. There's no way you can counter emotional arguments, really. So, but when something is emotional and subjective, then you cannot marshal logical arguments against it. But let me respond to it in this way. What we have, there was a time in world history we'll call it the Pax Romana, where the Roman law was the law of the land. And then what we have now is sort of the Western law is the law of the land. So I beg to differ. It makes it very easy when I discuss with a Christian and say, okay, we don't have this law in Christianity. And I say, no, you are not educated about Christianity enough. You have in the Old Testament, you have in the New Testament, and this is thousands of years of church history. I mean, the last person that was executed for blasphemy in England, I checked, was in the 17th century. It was 17th century. So he was executed. Why? Because he denied the miracles of Jesus Christ, and he denied the veracity of the Old Testament. These are religious crimes. So what happened where you find most Christians shying away from this heritage? I mean, I can make it more difficult, especially for a Catholic. You know, in Catholicism, you have this belief that the Pope is infallible.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. In Nigeria now, Catholicism is not reigning again. You have this denominations. Yeah. So in Catholicism, there's this rule that the Pope is infallible, and then this infallibility had to be redefined over time. That okay, when we talk about creedal issues, when we talk about ecclesiastic issues, that's when the Pope is infallible. Taking it that way, we have a string in history of the Catholic Church moving in to execute heretics. I mean, there's a particular one that is very popular. For every one of us who's very conversant with the history of science, Galileo Galilei.
Yeah.
What was Galileo's crime? He suggested that against church preaching that the Earth was the center of the universe, the solar system. Said the sun was, and he was forced to recant. And so actually, we had more brutal stuffs in that issue. We had the Inquisition, and it's not even the Catholics alone. John Calvin was one of the church fathers, Protestant church fathers. He had servitors executed. Why? He denied the Trinity. So when people say that it is not in Christianity, no, you are getting it wrong. It's there in Christianity.
But maybe perhaps Christianity has evolved.
Yeah.
So why won't Islam evolve as well?
And that was why I talked about the fact that we have an influence of the Western world. And in what case? The Western world, because some of these issues that they have with the church, the clash of church and state, the French Revolution of 1789 and stuff like this, it was decided that we cannot take God. And in this, an entire argument in itself, we'll discuss this. We cannot make God the center of our morality. We, as human beings, can determine what is good and bad for us. And it's a level of secular humanism. Yeah. So what people preach today as something against religion, these things are actually the thinking of Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke. Secularism goes back, secularism and the fact that we are all existentialism goes back to John Locke. And then we have what's called the harm principle. I can do whatever I like. I am not in any way responsible to be punished for whatever I do in my life, in as much as I've not harmed you. We call this the harm principle. This is by John Stuart Mill. So when this revolution came up in Christian Europe and also in the United States of America, and it's still ongoing, what you are having is you are finding that Europe is becoming more and more secularized. If you look at polls coming from Europe, you find that these are once great Christian nations that become more and more secularized. So when you ask people, why is this wrong? Why should Muslim? Okay, as you said, that Christianity has moved on. I'll say no. Christianity actually did not move on. We had an imposition of other values on Christianity, because you can look at the literature yourself and where were the changes? Where did they actually occur in history? So you have this imposition of secular humanism on a lot of Christian churches, and then they imbibe this. And of course, I would also argue that yes, you may have the bulk of Christianity saying this, but there are still people in Christianity, especially in the United States of America, where conservative Christianity is still very, very strong. It's on the decline, but still very strong. You have people who also actually appeal to this, who tell that no, we want the law of the Bible to be implemented, and then there's no way you want to implement the canon of the Bible without you talking about issues of blasphemy, issues of heresy, these are known things in church history.
Yeah, but in the New Testament, there was a time where one of the apostles wanted to fight for Jesus, and he told him to shed his sword. That
but not, I like that argument. Yeah, so I like that argument. I think that was Peter. Yeah, when he cut off the hair and then Jesus Christ, gummed the back. Yeah, so you see, this is one argument that Muslims also have made. And that's why I said you look at the topography of people who are objecting, and then you debate with them intellectually. Yeah. So some Muslims also would say this, because they said, and this is the argument, they said at the time of the Prophet there was no time he actually said people should, what he would do is to overlook. I mean, there are verse of the Quran saying that fa'fu wasfahu, just overlook. So, but it's easy to interpret that yes, those were periods about Jesus Christ and then Muhammad, did not have the legal apparatus to actually implement these laws. And then that, you see, let me situate Jesus Christ historically. Jesus Christ was a Jew. I mean, this is not, when you look at biblical literature in this, and it's not a matter of dispute. Secular biblical scholars and then even Christian, Jesus Christ lived his life as a Jewish rabbi. And you will remember that there were instances that they wanted to stone him to death. I think if I remember, that should be in the book of John, that they said he called himself God. He called himself. Then he wanted to stone him. What was the charge? Blasphemy. Do you get it? So in Judaic law, which was the law, I mean the New Testament, and I'm saying this historically. The scriptures that Jesus Christ used, that he worked with, was not the New Testament. It was the Old Testament. And so you find this being implemented. And then you can say very easily, if it's there and it says, okay, you said this about me, I overlook the fault, then there's no problem. The same thing the Paul was here. So okay, I overlook the fault. Yeah. So there's no problem. But if they are not there, and this is what the Kano law also does. People didn't also realize this. It is not only the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The law was explicit. Any prophet. So if I go to Kano and I insult Jesus Christ, the same law will apply to me. So that you do not deliberately abuse people's feelings by offending their religious sensibilities. And of course, we can talk about the freedom of speech, and then we'll bash that around.
That's it's very complex. It's a complex conversation. Okay, so from all the conversation, you stand is a decision that you support.
That
you support. Yeah. Okay.
That's not someone can call me Boko Haram. But that would be an emotional. Just I said, look, if you bring the arguments, then I'll respond. But it's okay. No, them you guys are Boko Haram and you're Tanzim Al-Qaeda. You didn't. Of course, those are emotional arguments. And as I say, you can't win emotional arguments.
Okay, but is it wrong to say it's the same ideology? Because they would tell you that if you don't accept, like the case of the Red Cross lady, what's her name? Like if you don't denounce Christianity and take up Islam, we're going to kill you. Things like that. Is there any similarity?
No, there are no similarity. It's like saying that Boko Haram or ISIS or Al-Qaeda represents Islam. It's like saying that the Lord's Republican Army in Uganda represents Christianity. So it's important that one reads wide and then one surveys the topography of arguments. And so I was once on a TV station, and somebody said, why? And it's a similar argument. I said, look, what are you talking about? If you're feeling that Boko Haram represent Muslims, then what would you say about the Lord's Republican Army led by Joseph Kony in Uganda? What is Joseph Kony fighting for? He wants Uganda to be run on the 10 commandments. That's what he does. And he does everything that Boko Haram does. Rape, cutting and maiming people, killing people. In fact, I checked. I realized that one of the reasons why the Lord's Republican Army, the LRA, are on they're waning now is because the US has soldiers in Uganda. And of course, this is the era of Google. You can Google this and then fact check what I'm saying. Not fake news. So the US is after him. So he doesn't have that freedom and will to operate again. So when it comes to Boko Haram, they are just like the Lord's Republican Army. And these are very differences. There is no judicial process when it comes to Boko Haram, number one. Number two, somebody must have actually committed a crime. It's not a crime to be a Christian. Even if you are in a place where it's 100% Muslim, you have rights that the Sharia enshrine. The verse of the Quran that is very commonly quoted, La ikraha fi din. You don't force people to become Muslims for no reason. I mean, false faith is no faith. That's the reality of it. So when Boko Haram takes up a Red Cross official and then says that the only way you're going to be saved is by you becoming, then it's madness. It's not a judicial process. There's nothing involved. It's just their whims and caprices. More so,
and it's not Islamic. It's not backed by the Quran.
It's not backed by the Quran. It's not Islamic. I mean, Red Cross are not even at war with you. Yeah. The standard rule is that people who are on diplomatic, even in war, media, it is clearly stated. Yeah. And I'm not talking about books written in the 21st century who probably, because of the offensive against Islam, want to water down Islam. I know. I'm talking about books, classical books. When we fight wars, you do not kill those people who are non-combatants.
Yeah.
Non-combatant. So it's like somebody who has a understanding of Islam on steroids when you talk about people like Boko Haram. So we are talking about a specific case here where the individual who committed the offense was himself a Muslim, who went through a judicial process, who did not, of course, I don't have access to the court papers, of course, who seemed not to deny the allegations against him, who also was aware of the gravity of the case against him. And then, so there's no comparison between what happened here and what Boko Haram does.
Okay.
Okay, so sometimes it looks like down south, Islam goes by a different set of rules, and up north, Islam is practiced differently. Is there some kind of difference in how Islam is practiced in the southwest, for instance, and in the north? Is there some extremism in the north and some kind of moderation down south?
Okay, fine. Let me do this way. I was given 2 books written by Christians. One, Ishmael, my brother, and then there was another one that I've forgotten the other one. Now, these books, when I read them, I realized that yes, this person is actually giving a very is actually representing the reality of what is that. We have what is called traditional Islam, whereby it's the Islam of everyday folks, influenced by culture and a lot of stuff. It's not the academic Islam that probably something that we will be talking about. So we have that, and then you have the academic Islam. It's like I think it's a phenomenon that happens in virtually all religions. So, but Islam, you have this traditional Islam. This is where the difference is, really. It's not about the practice. In the north, we have the culture is sort of Islamic. Let me use this. The culture is Muslim.
Predominantly
Muslim. So in the southwest is about, let me say the south. The south is about the most liberal, the most exposed to the west. When it comes to the south, you have the most exposed to the west. So, but when it comes to academic Islam, I mean Islam you find in the books, then there's no difference between the south and the north. What you just find that probably in the south we may not be as much as those people who are in the north. There are pros and cons, and in fact, I want to argue that it's the fact that there was a judicial process is better. What we know in the past, and I think that it's good why we have these things. In the past, what would have is that man will be dead now. There won't be a judicial process. We don't know if he actually did what he did or not. There will be mob action. They still said his family house ablaze, as I read. So this one, the fact that this mob action that is born out of the fact that you have people who want to take the laws into their hand is what we ought to condemn. That there should be a judicial process. If somebody's innocent to die, of course, when you leave actions to the mob. So that's why when it comes to academic Islam, there's no difference. But of course, environment varies. So, but this does have an impact on the fact that people are more extreme or people are more lax. It has to do with the fact that at times actions are taken by mobs who do not have an idea of what Islam is about. I'll give an example. I was in a car with somebody. Then I was coming from a TV program, and this guy, the anchor, told me to buy books for him. I wanted to learn Arabic. Yeah. Arabic is a language. It's just an intentional language. Of course, it's the language of the Quran. So I was in a car and I gave him these books, and they had these guys from the north asking for money. So I gave this guy the books, and he threw the books on the dashboard. I mean, just treat it this way. Then the guy was asking for money. Said
the guy who you bought the
book for. Then we were held by a red light, and the guy was begging for money. So he said, "La ilaha illallah, Qur'ani." And I told him, "No, this is not the Quran."
Okay, so
he was shocked.
Okay.
Then look, how can you deal with the Quran this way? And I said, "No." He didn't allow me to explain. He was already agitated. These are some of the problems
in Lagos.
In Lagos here. If it's not, it may be a little bit different.
It's a bit
but
different.
this book that I threw on the dashboard had no sacred value. It was just a book of Arabic grammar. So this is why it's important that there should be a judicial process. So that we will not leave actions to
but
the
if
mob.
there was no judicial process at that time.
So we can now discuss on the validity of or not of such.
Do you sometimes wonder? I mean, as a religious leader, in the Southwest, an Islamic leader in the Southwest, do you sometimes look at the actions of the people in the North and say, no, this is not Islam? Sometimes does that occur to you?
I'm trying to look for instances.
Okay, for example.
But the reality is, okay, yeah. I would like the example.
For example, people eating in public during Ramadan. And you have reports of them being attacked, right? Okay. I have a cousin who grew up in Kano who was beaten to the point of death. Like, this is really, like, this is not something, when they even brought him to Delta State, we housed him, the hospital and everything, because I think it was Kano or something, Kano and Pierre, the native Pierre, something like that, and he was beaten. No judicial, like you said, no judicial process, things like that. Actions like that, people who we hear from this side and have a perception of Islam and everything. Do you sometimes get...
No. Yeah. I mean, this, of course, when issues like this occur, one has to be very firm and say, no, this is wrong.
Okay.
No, this is wrong. I mean, there's no... This person is not a Muslim. There's no law that says that a non-Muslim should not eat in public in the month of Ramadan. So you may say, okay, probably as respect for the culture, but it's not a crime. I don't know of any book that will punish somebody, a non-Muslim who's eating public in the month of Ramadan. So this will be condemned. But of course, this is not only specific to the North. Just yesterday in India, there was a report that this is something like somebody insulted somebody or so, and then they had to burn down a police station.
Yeah.
So the same way that this is wrong. So when we find this anywhere, I mean, give examples, I'll be able to speak categorically on those examples. These are things that we ought to speak out against and condemn. That no, this is not part of Islam. And the ones that are part of Islam, but ordinarily also, it wouldn't sit very comfortably in the mind of somebody who's in the 21st century person. So, but it will be far more easier to defend if there's a judicial process. So I will condemn such.
So talking about the legal backing of, sentencing someone to death, the death penalty for blasphemy, and you're talking about for Christianity, it's because of the Western influence. That's why people have moved away from it. You still mention the difference between the Southern Muslims and the Northern Muslims, and you're still talking about the influence too. Is there anything against Western civilization from Islamic point of view?
Beautiful. From the Islamic point of view, when you look at the advances of Western civilization, we do not have a problem with it. There's no problem with Western civilization. But Western civilization is an entire package. It comes with certain stuff that we would not accept. And it's not only Muslims. No conservative Christian would ask. I mean, I have since I have certain people that I actually follow, Christian, that I listen to their podcasts, and then I find some of them far more. I've not seen the equivalent in Nigeria. Really.
For conservative,
not about being conservative alone. They are able to marshal their points and give and argue their case. So I give an example. In the United States of America now, you have this back and forth of legitimizing LGBTQ. Earlier on, they allowed civil marriages, and then now they said, okay, they can even have normal marriages. Christians are kicking against it. James White, William Lane Craig. Craig is a Christian philosopher. I mean, conservative Christians I know will kick against it, that this is not biblical. So the same way, these baggages that the Western civilization comes with, we would have problems with it. So this philosophical perception that secularism is what should reign, that human beings are in themselves free, would have issues with it.
Okay, sorry to cut you short. Will it be respected more if it's recognized as a religion, secularism, in that sense?
Yeah,
will it be respected more? So that's their own religion.
I think that's where the issue is. We see secularism more as a worldview.
Exactly.
When you say religion is a worldview, of course. Coming to I'm trying to briefly go to the religions, and then you have most of them are worldviews. You have some of them that are not actually don't have a total worldview. So, but the Judeo-Christianity, Islam, they are worldviews. So of course there will be clashes. Secularism is like, well, you are free to have whatever belief you want to have, in as much as you don't violate the secular principles. So no Christian is going to abide by it. and no Muslim's going to abide by that. But of course, we will need to deal with it and then relate with it because it's the order of the day.
Okay, another question was about, and I wanted to even have an understanding of that. Okay, because this is Sharia law in Kano, right?
Yeah.
As a citizen of Nigeria, do they have any law? Because that's a state crime. If you had done that in Lagos, you wouldn't have had a problem.
Yeah.
Would it have?
You would have a problem if somebody brought it up. That was why I started the criminal code. That blasphemy in itself.
Even though Lagos hasn't adopted the Sharia?
No, yeah.
So it's not a case of Sharia law?
No. That was why I said earlier that the legal angle of criticism will be invalid. So that was why I said in the criminal code, which operates in the South, I mentioned that section 204.
Okay.
204 says that also blasphemy is punishable, however, by a 2-year jail sentence.
Okay, not a death penalty.
It won't be death penalty.
Okay.
So even in Lagos, person would have problems. It will be the extent of the severity of that punishment.
But do we have Sharia courts in Lagos?
No, we don't.
So he will be tried in a civil
in a civil court, I can take it up with him and say that what you have done is blasphemy. And you have to go to court. Then you'll be tried in the civil court for blasphemy.
But that will be imprisonment and not death penalty. Not death penalty.
So that's
that death penalty law is peculiar to Sharia states.
Yeah.
Okay. So the argument right now is two questions. Why is the state law superseding a federal law?
Okay.
Right? Because you've already said if it happened somewhere else, it will be imprisonment and not a death penalty. Yeah. So it happened in Kano now, that's why it's a death penalty, which is backed by law. We understand that. But why is it superseding his identity as a Nigerian, as if which the federal government is under the federal government also.
And that's what I talked about earlier. There's no contradiction.
Oh, okay.
So the Nigerian law is saying that if you are in this geographical location, this geographical entity, this is the law that applies to you.
Oh, okay.
So of course, lawyers, you have 10 lawyers, you're gonna have 10 opinions.
Yeah.
So, but this is the way it plays out. This you have the constitution saying that any state that wants to adopt the Sharia penal code can adopt it.
And then sometimes the lawyers would also tell that the constitution supersedes every other.
The argument will now be that is there a contradiction between the constitution and that particular Sharia law? And then at the end of the day, from what I've seen, I do not like it. But the reality is that this man, nothing would have happened. And probably he would go scot-free. So I spoke to a lawyer friend, and he said, if he appeals, he goes to the Supreme Court.
Oh, okay.
And the Supreme Court is going to say, it won't fly. So this is another thing people do not look at, is this. That most likely, the Supreme Court is going to say, okay, it won't fly. Then even if it doesn't get to the Supreme Court, I want us to note that when was the last time there were public executions in Nigeria? It stopped. And of course, I discovered that governors everywhere, the north, the south, the southeast, the southwest, have refused to have those executions unlike it was in the past. So you have the United Nations, Amnesty International, all these bodies saying that you want the death penalty to be abolished. And that's also an argument I keep. If somebody says that I have problems with death penalty, I'm saying, okay, Amnesty International, even if your father was killed, if your child was raped, you don't have the right. A lot of Nigerians will say no. In fact, for a lesser crime, a lot of Nigerians will say kill them. Corruption. That's an argument. Why didn't they kill Ganduge when he stole dollars?
Exactly. I was going to ask you that. How come no politician is ever taken to a Sharia court?
I'm going to come to that. So let me address this. So, and then you realize that even if this person does not appeal the case, it's going to just be in the cell there. We are not implementing death penalty. And this is one of the reasons why we are having police brutality. Anybody that the police feels is a bit dangerous to themselves, they kill the person. So it's also affecting us negatively. So, but this is what I'm saying. So, coming to what you said, that why are politicians not? Funny enough, in China, corruption would earn you the capital punishment. Capital punishment. Yeah. A lot of Nigerians love that law. They love that law. Because I mean, you know, poverty endemic environments, especially when the poverty is caused by those in power, gives you a sort of different moral landscape. So in China, it's a punishment that your one can lose his or her life, and China has been judiciously doing this.
Yeah.
So why is the case that politicians are not judged by the Sharia law? So I respond to that by saying that number one, the Sharia makes no discrimination between the commoner and the king.
Yeah.
Ideally, it's a universal law. I mean, there was a particular incident that somebody very close to the prophet actually committed a crime. He hurt somebody, and there was going to be retribution, and then they sent emissaries to beg the prophet. And the prophet said, "Look, this is what destroyed people before you. When the rich and powerful commit a crime, you let them go. When the low and poor commit a crime, you punish them." So it is wrong for us to have a law for commoners and a law for kings. So this is ideally it's wrong. Secondly, the law in the Sharia for corruption is not the capital.
Okay.
This punishment for corruption, but it's not capital. So and if somebody said that, okay, since you are not implementing this law here, don't implement it there, it will be a false argument, because we know that in Nigeria, people get away with murder, and I mean, for no reason would we say that, okay, because some people get away from murder, if you are idle, please, okay, scrap the punishment for murder or armed robbery. So we address the idea that no, if this happens, it's wrong. But at the same time, you still go back to the argument and say that, okay, because it's not judiciously implemented across the board, does not mean that the entire law in itself should be thrown down the drain.
Okay. So we've talked about the legal backing and all that. You've established that legally, it's not. What about Islam itself? What does the Quran or the book of law guiding the religion, right? What does it say about blasphemy?
Yeah. And just as I mentioned earlier, then what you have is and I tell people this, that look, if you want to criticize the Islamic Sharia, you would have to criticize certain segments of the Bible also, because the laws are actually very similar. So in the Quran, factually, you will not find a verse that says kill the blasphemer.
Okay.
There's some Muslims said, okay, where is the verse in the Quran? No, but the Quran is not only the source of law in Islam. It's not only the source of law. We have actions, statements, and practices of the Prophet where we can infer that yes, this law is punishable by death. And in the law books, it's an issue of consensus that blasphemy is punishable by death. And then there's even a lacuna that some jurists bring up and say, okay, the person, if he repents,
what do you do?
we would let him go. And there are people who say that even if he repents,
Yeah.
there are people. So I don't know what this issue is in itself. It's an issue that is represented in the legal school adopted by Northern Nigeria.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it's going to play out. If I say that, okay, I've repented, how would it play out? What are they going to adopt? What I know is supposed to be the dominant view is that if the person repents and says that, okay, that was an error, I didn't mean it, we're supposed to let the person go. And are they going to adopt this or adopt the other stance that says that even if you have repented, we won't let you go? And why have they said that? Because the argument is that yes, you've repented, but we don't know if the prophet were to be alive, he's going to overlook it. So he says we with him on the day of resurrection. So repentance, we've accepted it. There's no problem. We won't have any issues. So, but this order, we will kill you for his rights. So on the day of resurrection, he will forgive you. So
Okay, but if there's no backing from the Quran,
Yeah.
which is written by the prophet, right?
yeah.
That means the prophet is not something the prophet has outrightly said that there's death penalty for blasphemy.
It's not like the prophet wrote the entire book of.
We understand that his inspiration behind.
Yeah.
So, like going back to your conversation on secularism, which is which you said was formed on the basis of human interpretation. This is what we want to do. This is what we don't want to do as humans. Isn't that the same thing as humans putting in the law when it's
so
not
Islam is from the Quran. The Quran is a verbatim word of God. That's it. So but interpreting the Quran is left to the prophet. But as I said earlier, the Quran is not the one and only source of law for Muslims. We have about 10 sources of law. So I may not be able to. I mean, there's an entire body of Islamic sciences called Islamic legal theory, usul fiqh. So we have about 10 different sources of law, and then so it's not in the Quran, but you find it in the Sunnah, that is in the actions and symbols of the Prophet, and you find it in the judicial practices of those. I mean, it's a consensus across board, across the legal schools. It's a consensus that blasphemy it's apostasy, and it's punishable by death. So it's not. Then that's why Muslims who say this, they say maybe you are not reading your books, or you are being shallow about it, or you are appealing to secular humanism. So I've seen some of them put up these arguments and say, look, you have it as a matter of consensus across legal schools that this is a punishment for it. So is there a human element? And then compare this with secularism. Secularism is a different ball game. Secularism is a rebellion against God, that God should not have a place in public life. God should not have a place in public life. It's between you and your Creator. And this before the 16th, 17th century problems in Europe, it's an anomaly. Human life has always been in a relationship with something divine. There's always been a relationship with something divine. If an atheist is making this argument, probably an atheist would have a better, how do I put it? An atheist may have a better grounding to say that, okay, why are you doing this? But of course, the argument also in itself would be easily knocked out.
Okay, so I was wondering, because we've spoken, I'm very interested in how, the religion, the Islamic religion is practiced in the two major geographical regions. We have 6, but the 2 major ones of South and North.
I mean, before the advent of the British, Northern Nigeria was wholly and totally Islamic. Yeah. So they had their law books, they had everything that was based on Islam. And then in the Southwest, it was more customary. So they looked at the customs of the places and adopted them, and then brought them up into law. So of course we would have these differences.
Yeah. So for instance, you go to Kano and you can't drink beer on the streets. Not like I drink beer. Okay. You can't take alcohol on the streets.
Can't be lying before
Come on. But in the South it's different. Where exactly in the Quran is it written that alcohol is such a bad thing that shouldn't be taken publicly or shouldn't be taken at all?
Yeah, okay. So the Quran, number one, the environment in which the Quran was revealed was an alcohol-consuming environment. Yeah. So it was a gradual prohibition of alcohol. In fact, some of the companions of the Prophet used to say that if it were prohibited at a go, nobody would stop drinking alcohol. So, but of course, you have in the Quran alcohol being prohibited, and one needs to understand the reason why alcohol is being prohibited. And I like to make things tougher on myself. So I'll say that it's not about the Quran ordinarily. It's something that we as humans would also realize that alcohol is a far more potent drug than some of the drugs that are banned. If you look at the statistics, anywhere, you realize that is what is responsible for a lot of road accidents.
But it's actually written in the Quran that it's prohibited.
Yeah.
Because I know some Muslim friends in the South who abstain from alcohol. Yeah.
And there's one who drink.
I've not seen. I'm yet to see anyone who drinks.
Oh, there are
your friends.
Yeah,
no, me too. I don't think my Muslim friends.
I don't see them drinking.
I don't see them drinking.
Okay, I have seen Muslims who actually.
I'm talking about like the ones close to me. I've seen people outside. I've seen Muslims outside, but I don't think any of my friends were Muslims.
So that when you talk about alcohol, I said it was prohibited in stages. I had that in mind because some persons would go and say that, what about this? But this is in the Quran. Yes, of course, because the first verse that was revealed was that. They ask you about alcohol and gambling. That there's a benefit in it.
This is Arabic. Yeah?
This is Arabic. This is a verse of the Quran. Okay. That there's benefit in it, but the harm outweighs the benefit. First verse that was revealed. Second verse that was revealed about the prohibition of alcohol was that when you are drunk, don't come to pray.
Yeah.
That was second verse. Then the last one was that don't drink it at all. So you have people who tell that. What about this one that says? And they sort of throw away the chronological order of things and say, but this one says that. So it's no. Muslims should not consume alcohol, and I'm not making that claim. I'm saying that people, Muslim or non-Muslim, should not consume alcohol. Interestingly, in the 1930s, if you can fact check this also, the United States actually prohibited alcohol.
Yeah, it was prohibited in 1930s.
But they couldn't sustain it because we were getting worse things and they were consuming it. Yeah. And I think that in Nigeria, I mean, you mentioned the fact that they are drinking it publicly in the north. I think
they're not drinking it publicly in the north.
That they are not drinking. Yes, I think it should be the case in the southwest. And I want us to look at it objectively. We know the impact of alcohol on road accidents.
Yeah.
Why is it the case that where you have alcohol being consumed most are the motor parks? I when I go traveling, I look at some of the I don't want to mention brand names here. Yeah. Different sort of brands and some of these things actually in the same country they have to be regulated because some people are consuming poison. I mean, I have a bit of knowledge in chemistry. There's a percentage of alcohol that is not deemed to be healthy for you. If the percentage is very high, you're not drinking a beverage. You are killing yourself.
Even if you use a mixer, I mean, I'm just saying.
No. I mean, when you have alcohol content of say 30%,
it's bad.
I mean, when in the secondary school we did chemistry, our chemistry would tell us if you drink this one, you go blind because it was laced with methanol. Yeah. So and you have these things being sold now. You mean in the past they brew this thing locally, but now people go to companies and you can check this and then they buy 100% alcohol. And then they dilute. Yeah. And some of these people who dilute, because the higher this thing, the percentage, the more intoxicating it is. So they will not dilute to even safe healthy levels. If there's something safe or healthy about, and we have papers upon papers talking about the evils of alcohol, the impact on your liver. So the underlying reason why it's prohibited in Islam is that Islam wants to protect one's intellect, and anything that would not make you up is prohibited.
Thank you guys for listening. It's Everyday People. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. We'll talk to you next week.